Should be coming on in a couple of secs. Can you share it on social Sky? Hello, good evening and welcome. It's great to see you. If you're joining us tonight for the Lockdown Parenting 2, I'm Will Van Der Hart, and I'm really excited tonight about re-engaging on this subject of parenting. Can't quite believe it. We're back again 2 weeks later, and delighted that you're joining us. Hopefully this week we won't have any technical difficulties. Last time you remember, I had my Paw Patrol headphones in, which I had to cannibalize from my son. This week, slightly more mature headgear. So it's great to be with you. It's great to be on this call. And we're going to be welcoming Jo tonight, Jo Stilwell, who is part of the leadership team from KidsMatter. She's head coach and facilitator, or coach facilitator, lead coach facilitator. So we're excited to have her joining us. We're going to be talking a lot about circle of security, children's emotional health, and hopefully a little bit as well on parental health and well-being. So we're going to let you join this call, and we're going to be getting going in the next couple of minutes. Let's check. We've got everything going on here that should happen. Excellent. Great. Welcome to you if you're just joining us. I wonder if I can. Okay. A few more folk are joining us live. It's great to have you just joining us right now on our Lockdown Parenting Workshop tonight. It's great to have you with us. I know there's quite a lot of people from across London. Last week had the Army Parenting Network. If you're back this time, welcome to you. If you're an exhausted parent and just grabbing yourself a glass of something to help you through the evening, welcome. Take a couple more minutes. We've got about 3 or so minutes before we're going to get going tonight. Lou, can I just check everything's okay your end? Great. Excellent, Jo is here.
Hiya.
Great to see you, Jo. Welcome to the call. Excellent. That's a relief that you've made it on. It's slightly nerve-wracking with all the technology here, trying to make everything work well. It's great to have you with us.
Let me just sort my background out.
Okay. If you're just joining us tonight, again, welcome to you. Just letting a few people gather, and it's fantastic. Congratulations for making it on the call. This is the hardest bit, is trying to get kids into bed, or kids to get their homework finished, or kids to pack away the tech, and actually hopefully give you a few minutes to think about things. We just got a couple of minutes until we're going to start formally, so welcome. Grab yourself a drink, settle in on the sofa. Excellent. How are you, Jo? You okay?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, had a good day, but looking forward to this.
Excellent. 1 minute and then we're going to get started. Just let people, it's nothing worse than arriving for the train and seeing it leave early. So awesome. Okay. Lou, can you just check my sound again to make sure we're still all working? Jo, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, brilliant. That's good news. Okay. Excellent. Great. I think 30 seconds or thereabouts. Perfect. We like it. At St Dinas, we like to try and do everything live, which is, I think, a real blessing because we don't like things to be too polished. But also, it's a bit like being in the BBC newsroom before they actually start the show, and you're sort of watching everyone chatting and doing their hair and organising their background. So it's a little awkward, but there we go. We'd rather it that way, wouldn't we, Joe? We like it. We like to keep things live, keep things real.
In it all together.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'm going to kick us off tonight just by, again, warmly welcoming you. If we haven't met before, I'm Will Van Der Hart. I'm the Associate Vicar at St Dinas in Parsons Green. I'm also one of the founding directors of the Mind and Soul Foundation, exploring issues of mental, emotional health and Christian spirituality. I'm an ex-primary school teacher. That's now a significant amount of time ago, but I'm trained primary school teacher and been involved in education a little before that too. And certainly really, really passionate about well-being, particularly amongst younger people. I've got 3 children myself who are in the younger age group. I've got a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 4-year-old. So if you're on the call tonight and you've got primary age children, I can certainly relate to those challenges. And we're going to introduce Joe a little bit later on, but I just want to welcome you. And again, say if you've got on this call tonight and it's live, you've done amazingly well. If you can just pick up the call a little later in the week and you're just watching this back through, again, fantastic, well done. You've done a great job. Just trying to invest in your parenting under pressure is so hard, but so valuable. So congratulations, give yourself a big pat on the back. If you don't get anything out of tonight, but you've just sat down on the sofa and watched this, then I hope that that's some benefit in and of itself. If you were on our Lockdown Parenting 1 seminar just 2 weeks ago with Kate Middleton, we did a sort of broad range of topics there, but particularly built around what are called the 4 corners of parenting in lockdown. And they were compassion, compromise, collaboration, and confidence. And so we looked at those 4 corners and really want to kind of encourage you tonight to think about those things again. We're going to encourage you to kind of re-engage with the topic and have a little look. We're going to talk about 4 other things tonight because we're going to do a little bit of Bowlby's kind of attachment theory. We're going to do a bit of that with Joe in a little while. But just to encourage you, just to see those important corners of the table again tonight as we start off. So the first one was compassion. And we really believe here that we've all got a harsh inner critic. That is a little voice in our head that's saying, you're not doing well enough, you're not doing this good enough, your children are suffering because of your incompetence. In our minds, I think many of us who've got children of school age are thinking that there are other parents out there who are doing a brilliant job, who are explaining everything perfectly. Their children are lined up in school uniform. It's probably just as good as it would be if they're actually in school, and you're somehow failing and it's all a disaster at your end. We just really want to change the script tonight and say, look, you're doing an amazing job. You're the best parent that your children could ever hope for. This is difficult. And you can do better if you're kind to yourself and just say, actually, I'm doing the best I can. I'm just trying as hard as I can. And that's good enough. So try and be kind and compassionate. Secondly is compromise. We'll talk again a bit more about this later on. But just it's so important, again, in the spirit of compassion, that you are able to compromise appropriately. Now, obviously, we can talk about over-compromising and saying, kids, you don't need to do any homeschool today at all. That might be an over-compromise. We can talk about under-compromising. That is saying you've got to do everything this way to the letter and getting really stressed about it if it doesn't happen according to your plan. Or you can say, actually, let's try and compromise. Let's try and build, a collaboration. Let's compromise. I'm going to flex this slightly. We're going to have a slightly longer lunch break, or, hey, we're going to have a treat. Let's try and compromise and then build an accord with our child. Rigidity in this season is really unhelpful. And actually talking to a lot of teachers, they don't expect you to achieve the world. They're thinking anything you can do is a good thing. So compromise is significant. Be kind to yourself and compromise. Thirdly, in the spirit of compromise, there's a bit of collaboration. We just want to encourage you to kind of build a dialogue with your own children, and actually begin to have conversations. Even with the very young children, we can still collaborate It's tidy up time. Let's do it together. You put in 1 brick, I'll put in 10, but let's share responsibility and collaborate. And that's also collaborating with other parents and maybe even with your children's teachers and saying, how can I do this better? Have you got any resources you can share to shed the load that you're carrying personally? And then finally, the fourth corner was around the idea of confidence, and just saying, actually, when you're confident in what you're doing, even if you know you're ill-equipped for the task, a little bit of confidence goes a really long way. So we want to encourage you tonight to just step into this with confidence and courage, and know that things will go better if you do. So there's a little outline of last week, and I'm going to welcome Jo now. Jo, it's great to have you with us tonight. Now you're really instrumental in the KidsMatter program, movement, organisation. Just as a way of introduction, tell us a bit about what you do and also about your own family.
Yeah, thanks, Will. It's great to join us, everyone, together again tonight. So KidsMatter is an organisation that looks to support churches to really try and break the cycle of deprivation in communities, and we do that through a parenting programme. And I very much come in on the tails of an amazing team who have developed a programme that's based around psychological theories, but also styled to really enable parents together just to be real. It's all about just chatting, sharing, and learning from one another in the room, which again, that's why I love what the sort of style of this evening with us, we're here just as parents together. So KidsMatter, particularly the sort of younger age group, the primary age range, but just looking to learn from one another, sharing our challenges mostly, but also just learning from one another and using the material to help us, learn new skills in parenting. But particularly for those amongst our community who are really struggling in poverty, actually to give skills to parents can really be a real game changer in how a child's experience growing up can be. And we're really hoping to see children who are in need being raised in stronger families, and that's what KidsMatter tries to support churches in their communities to do.
And Jo, specifically, you're invested in coaching. You're helping the coaches to actually support parents to parent and to build their strength of family.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had the team that supports the volunteers that run those programs, because we just know that we need to be supporting those people, because it's tough trying to encourage and support people who are really struggling in the added adversity that they have. So yeah, we run a sort of support coach team that keep encouraging the volunteers who are running those programs in their community.
That's amazing. Now, Jo, you're not just a practitioner, you're also a personal expert, because you've got 3 children of your own. Tell us, you're a little bit further ahead of me stage-wise. Tell us a bit about your own family.
Much further down the line, and they very much now parent me. We have 3, Tim and I, we have 3 young people, sort of mature young people now in their 20s, 26, 24 and 22. The eldest is married, so we have the glory of a son-in-law as well, which is wonderful. And then we have a son, Luke, and then our daughter Emma. So she's still at university, and Luke and Bex are working now. Yeah.
Now, we've said throughout this pandemic that it's challenging for different people in different ways, and there are significant challenges for everyone. Last week we focused a little bit more on younger children. We're going to start there, and I want to ask if you were back, if your children were back in that kind of early primary age, what do you think you would find most difficult about the pandemic, specifically as a parent, and lockdown particularly?
Yeah. Can I just absolutely, first and foremost, take my hat off to you parents who are parenting younger children at home, or actually and young teenagers too. I absolutely take my hat off to you. It's just huge and so challenging. I was thinking about this. I think when our kids were that sort of age, we lived in a in a flat, in a sort of shared, bigger house divided into flats. And I was thinking, I think what I would have done is sort of subcontracted. I think I would have used the stairwell as the school, and left the kids with the wonderful other people that lived in the other flats. And I think I would have sort of gone out and done PE across the road. We had there's a common piece of grass. I think I would have just got outside. I think for me, that would have been my struggle. I think for me, I just had to be outside. We didn't have any outside space in the flats, when the different flats we lived in when our kids were younger. And so kind of by 10 o'clock, I had to be outside. Otherwise, I would go stir crazy. And it's probably chicken and egg, but I think our kids grew up to be a bit like that too. So the ways in which people are having to manage within such small confines of homes, I think that I would have really, really struggled with, and that sort of physical constraint. But also, particularly, our son was incredibly physically active. And I just can't imagine, when you're limited in where you can go and for how long you can go outside with children. That like I say, I take my hat off to all of you guys who are doing that now.
And parents, I mean, I'm a parent of two young boys who've got a huge amount of energy. You can feel quite quickly like a failure when because physical, like the desire for physical action can quite quickly spill over into physical frustration.
Yeah, for sure.
How do we kind of de-escalate in the house? Have you got any strategies around de-escalation, or how do we keep the children feeling sort of secure and calm? Any thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it is about like you've already said, just that sort of compromise, but also just kind of being ready to sort of read where we're at. And, it's great to have a plan. And I think structure, we know that structure for children is really important. But within that, if things are just blowing up a little bit, just to say, right, okay, we're going to pause on this and let's go outside, let's go do something. Or do some rough and tumble within the house, climbing up on a whole load of cushions, or just anything as creative, and ask them. I think sometimes we put all the pressure on ourselves that we need to come up with all the ideas, but just asking our guys used to come up with some great, it was terrible. Well, in the end it broke the cot, but we had the bunk beds next to the cot. And so, of course, we had some great games. So they would jump out of the bunk bed into the cot. So it did mean that Emma, our youngest, slept at a sort of 45-degree angle for quite a long time. And then in the end, she basically had to go into a bed sooner than was probably safe, because it completely broke. But, those kind of things, just activities, what can they come up with? Creative ideas, creating dens.
Yeah, and involving, I think one of the challenges I find as a parent is almost the fear of, if you start giving the opportunity to decide for themselves where that's going to go.
Yeah, sure.
And I think there's that whole thing, isn't there, about the sort of impositional parenting of saying, well, I'm not going to let you choose, because if you choose, you're probably going to choose something terrible. When actually, again, you can compromise the kind of how dramatic the physical activity is going to get, and they just want to be involved. Sorry, just a moment. My hamsters, my daughter's hamsters, are just making a lot of noise in the background. Let me just tap on the hamster cage for a sec. Hold on.
Well, wonderful. We can't hear it, Will, so don't worry.
He likes his wheel rather a little bit too much there. Sort of, I think
illustrating the point of what we were
just
talking
looking at me
about.
now. He's looking at me now. He's thinking, get lost. What are you doing? He's probably go straight back to it in a minute. I wanted to talk to you a little bit. I remember when I was training as a teacher, I did quite a lot of Piaget and kind of the whole attachment theory, and it was really interesting how children attach. I wonder if we could just talk a little bit about circle of security, because that's an idea. It's a concept that has been pretty well thought of recent years in sort of child psychology. It's born out of John Bowlby's fourfold attachment model, isn't it? I think that's the kind of, there are four. I think if you have not come across this before, people, if you imagine a table with four legs, that's sort of nice and flat, the sort of thing you want to do your homework on, each leg keeps the table nice and balanced. And so the Bowlby's 4 points of attachment, or 4 steady legs, are proximity management, separation anxiety, a secure base, and a safe haven. Now, if I can just explain the first 2, then I'm going to leave Jo to talk about the circle of security specifically. So if you are a social worker on this call, you'll know, or if you've met social services before, you'll see them picking up a child and if you like, just checking their attachment. And the way they do that is just lift up the child. If it cries, that is a sign of separation anxiety. So they're connected to mum. They don't want to be separated, so they cry in order to stay close to mum. If you see a little child in the sort of, maybe in an environment like a shopping centre, you'll see them kind of hanging onto the skirt or the trouser of dad or mum, and they're just managing their proximity to parent. So they're just trying to stay close. And so what we see is 2 sort of signs of attachment. One is crying when the child is separated, and one is managing the space in order to stay proximal to parent. So there are 2 signs there of attachment. That means kind of bonding with parent. There are 2 other aspects here, though, aren't there, Jo, which are a little, if you like, if proximity management and separation anxiety are slightly younger in the developmental phases, then you've got these 2 others which form the basis for the circle of security, a safe haven and a secure base. So you want to explain how the model works from there?
Yeah, well, so some psychologists who are clinical, and therapeutic psychologists in America just made a sort of simple diagram for us and for me as a parent, just a normal parent, to help us understand what's going on in our children's world. So as Will said, you've got the 2 hands that are the safe haven and the secure base. And then from those hands, the child goes out onto the top of the circle. So if you imagine the hands are at the, say at 9 o'clock of a circle, and the top of the circle, the child goes out, and the child is naturally designed to go off and explore. And obviously that will be within the realm of their age. So a baby from 5 months is shown to be looking with their eyes, and they'll look away. And so that would be going on the top of the circle. For a 5-year-old, it would be heading off, to try and go climb a tree a little bit. And then the bottom of the circle, so they're coming back into the safe haven. And that is to sort of check in. Am I still okay? Am I still welcome? Is there that safe haven? And then if all is well, they will then head back out on the circle. And basically the building the bonds of connection and attachment are just successfully creating, many cycles around that circle. And as they grow in confidence and as they grow in age, then obviously that circle and what going out looks like becomes a very different thing. So it will be becoming them going off to school for a whole day. But the coming in is, again, it might be a child, they've sort of fallen over, hurt themselves, they come in, will I receive that safe haven, have those safe hands? Will that circle be reported such that I'm ready? And you see it with toddlers when they've come in, you lift them up onto your lap, they're a bit sad, and then they settle, they feel safe again. And that sort of wriggle where they're like, right, I'm ready now, and they're sort of stretching and arching to get off your lap. They're ready to go off and explore again. And for us as parents, it's helping ourselves to sort of see that and to make sure that we can launch them out into age appropriate what they want to do, but be ready to hold them in. And so, as I say, just to repeat those patterns, and that's what builds their attachment, their confidence. And actually, so, well, perhaps I won't go on to the sort of quirks of it just yet, but that's the sort of essence of it.
So helpful. And actually, if you're a parent of an older child, this model is really significant for older children too, teenagers and young adults, and even beyond.
Absolutely.
So don't think if you're a parent of an older child that actually this is relevant to you. So what Jo's saying is a pair of hands. The top hand here is the secure base, and it goes into the adventuring phase. Then when the emotional cup runs out, goes into the recovery phase, into the safe haven where the feelings of the child are organised. So my daughter, I remember this. She's obviously now she's 12, but I remember going to the playground with her, and first trips to the playground, she's like holding on to my arm, and I said, it's a fenced playground, so I said, well, why don't you go and have a play? And she starts off by, no, Daddy, I'm staying with you. Then gets the wriggle that you describe of like, right, okay, I'm ready to go. And then in the adventuring phase, runs across the playground to the swings, gets on the swings, has a really good time. But then the big kids come and her emotional cup kind of empties out. Then she's looking for me, where's Daddy? Then runs back to me to sort of say, oh, the big kids have come, Daddy. And then wants to sit on the bench with me and doesn't want to do anything for a while. So I guess in my experience, that's probably the circle of security being worked out, Jo.
Exactly. And once you're kind of looking for it, as you say, you see it across all ages, all stages. Yeah. And
there are ways I can see in which this is really helpful for parents right now in lockdown, because it gives them the ability to identify. One of the difficult things about lockdown is the sort of enmeshment where there isn't any distance or any change in the day, but actually children are still going on. They're still in the adventuring phase.
Yeah.
We're sort of trying to release them, particularly older children, into managing their own schoolwork, managing the online, and then they're getting exhausted and irritable and their emotional cup's running out. And then they're coming back to us. But it's quite easy to miss and quite easy to get irritated. So I found, I'm sure there are lots of parents out there who are getting a bit irritated by constant interruptions. But the interruptions we're receiving might well be the children on the return recovery phase of the circle of security. Isn't that the case? What should we do, Jo, in terms of how can we tune ourselves into these two phases in lockdown? What emotions do you think children are particularly struggling with expressing right now?
Yeah, well, for sure, as you say, that sense of lack of adventure and feeling very constrained. And then, of course, if we as parents are feeling particularly responsible that they must complete all this schoolwork and it's all on us, and the older ones, are they actually doing their work on the computer, or are they on a game or messaging their friends? Our anxiety could get very high, and so then we miss those cues of when they are coming back in. And instead of being that safe haven and the secure base, we actually are miscuing, and we're either pushing them back out, or when they want to come back in, we're saying, no, you don't come back to me, don't stop, don't try, and you're just distracting yourself until you've finished your work. So our stresses and strains and the pressures we're feeling while we're also trying to do our work, or other things with other children, we can come off the circle, if you like, ourselves, and we stop being that safe haven and the secure base. So I think the first and foremost thing is be kind to yourself. Like Will said at the beginning, we're putting a lot of pressure on ourselves. Just reflect on that and just make sure our kids are not going to be unemployable dropouts if we don't complete a particular exercise this week. The most important thing is to be there, to be those hands for our teenagers, for our youngsters. So first and foremost, I think look after yourself. And then, as you say, just looking to ask the questions of what's going on, rather than assuming or jumping to conclusions with them. What's going on? Are you struggling? Come and tell me what's going on, so that they know that they can come in. That doesn't mean to say as you say, it's a dial out. It's not an over compromise, but at least you're starting from a point of communication as to what's going on.
That's so helpful, because I think many parents right now, the temptation that we have is to assume if the child's coming out of their room, their study room, it's basically they're giving themselves a break, or they want some sweets, or they're messing around. But actually, what the circle of security does, it helps us to see the emotional positioning of the child, rather than just assuming it's very mechanistic. Yeah. I mean, I'd be like, what are you doing? Like, you still got a class, you're online, but you're asking the question, actually, how are you doing? Which is I think we're probably, hands up, we're probably the first to say, what are you doing? But I like your question there. How are you doing? Is a different sort of question, and much more disarming for the child as well to feel comforted. And the adventure thing is odd in lockdown. I've got to be honest. Bye, going up the stairs, or bye, close the door. There's not much adventure, but I found it still important to describe the adventure with the children, and we've done that around the dinner table. So we've had a sort of quite a big discourse around what's the high of your day being, as a way of articulating that top hand and the kind of adventuring phase from a secure base. So they've almost talked about an adventure, even though we know they haven't really been very far.
Yeah.
Is it helpful to sort of dialect the story, or to give us, to enable them to describe the adventure? We do highs and lows.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, we're talking about a circle that's got shape. Life feels very flat. I mean, particularly for our young people, they miss their friends. They haven't got, their chats, they're hanging out. So, could feel very flat for them. So definitely making the most, finding those moments. There's a lot around us, and they're just naming and making moments. What responsibilities can we give them? Challenges? Can they cook a meal? Can they come up with a menu? What can we give to them as they are looking to go off and explore? How can we do that within the confines and the stresses of living all on top of each other? Yeah, for sure.
There's something I want to pick up on there, Jo, particularly for children of slightly older parents, is that some children would say, well, you're really patronizing me, Dad, all this stuff about adventure and recovery and secure base, safe haven. With older children, though, it's really important, isn't it, to enable them the adventure of responsibility. You've talked there about cooking meals, about, organizing their time, about, doing their own work. How do you get the balance right with older children between trying to over support them, or like mollycoddle them through, and trying to give them enough responsibility to kind of get stuff done for themselves? Any tips on that for parents? Because I know I've spoken to some parents who really just, they don't know whether they should be sort of basically facilitating everything but the work, which is basically, they are sort of 100% enabling everything, or whether they should be saying, look, I want you to take some responsibility for yourself and for the family at large. Any thoughts around that area of work?
Yeah, I think each of the parents here, you will know your children, and I think I would say all of this I have to say I didn't do with our kids. I didn't understand or come to know about this until they were teenagers. However, it still had a huge change. I mean, it literally dramatically changed the relationship with one of our children particularly. But I think one of the really helpful things was someone said to me that our kids, they have a chronological age, but don't be fixed by that. And I would say for sure that our kids, one of them was always kind of way older than their chronological age. One of them has, in some ways, has been ahead, and in other ways always lagging behind and taking their time to come to a place. So you can't just say, oh, well, you're this age now, you should really be able to do X, Y, Z. Or equally, well, no, you're too young, I can't ask you to do this. So your children, the kind of interest they have. So I think, again, talking to them, asking them, I'd love us all to be mucking in together. What would you like to do? And trying to give choice that's carefully, as you say, you don't want them suddenly to say, oh, I'll take to, cleaning the flat windows and you're on the 5th floor or something. That's not going to be healthy for anyone. So putting some boundaries within that, but what can you ask them? What would they choose to do? Knowing their characters and knowing how they generally respond to challenge and responsibility.
That's really helpful. My wife, Lou, who's much better at parenting than I am, she taught me the strategy where you expand choice with age. So obviously, the older you are, the more choice you get. But even young children benefit from saying, do you want to wear the blue socks or the red socks? Now, the trick is actually that they've got to wear their socks. The fact that they're making a choice makes it their choice, so it's their socks.
Yeah.
And actually they wear the socks and there's not a row. If you say, do you want to wear some socks? They'll say no. If you want to say, do you want to wear the blue socks or the red socks? They'll say whichever colour they prefer. And so I guess it's a helpful tip again, I think, particularly in lockdown, where we can just feel so irritated and want to just get everything done that things like offering choice feels like an extra burden. But actually offering choice can be a really good way of helping children play their part and collaborate, and also can diffuse quite a lot of rows.
Yeah, definitely.
Jo, I wonder if you just say something. I know that KidsMatter do some incredible work, particularly with single parent families and maybe parents in vulnerable settings. I'm very conscious. I've got the real benefit of parenting with Lou, and quite a lot of community support around us. I'm really conscious for amazing parents parenting alone right now in difficult circumstances. Have you got any specific advice or encouragement you can offer to parents who might be parenting alone right now, and particularly with regard to how they might be feeling?
Yeah, well, again, first and foremost, just, big hand, goodness me, how fabulous are you being that safe haven and secure base to your children, and well done you. And I think I'm sure people doing this long yourselves, you'll know, but I think the key things for all of us, it's about just putting things in that will bless us, that will be self-help for us, things that we will take joy in, because we give of everything of ourselves, don't we? And when it is just us, there are no other options. So I would say, again, as you plan the day as much as you can, don't forget to plan things for yourself, and to plan them in advance, and to hopefully, if it's to kind of arrange to have a call with a friend, plan that in advance, because we all know that come 8:30 when the kids are in bed, that isn't the time that you're then going to have that energy to think, right, okay, who can I call? Who's a friend I can just have a chat with? You're just going to think, oh, I haven't got the energy. But if you've planned it ahead, then it's like, oh, okay, that's in place, that person is expecting a call, and actually get them to call you. Just take away as many of those obstacles as you can. So to put things in that will help you, the little and often things, like if you light a candle, just to kind of feel like you're doing something special for you. If you've got hobbies, make the time to do that. And again, I think it's absolutely fine to say to the children, right, for 10 minutes, I'm going to put the timer on the cooker for 10 minutes. I cannot be interrupted. And, see how that goes. Again, depends on the age and stage. But, try and think of a time in the day where the kids in general feel fairly settled, maybe just after tea or something. And just to give yourself and to plan set time for yourself to look after yourself. And none of us are meant to be doing any of this on our own. Parenting is lonely, whether you're doing it with a co-parent or on your own. So get a bigger team around you as you can. For sure. Let's just call in those people and say, I need you. That's quite a humbling thing, isn't it, to ask for help, and but just to say, right, I need people on my team. Who's gonna call me? Who's gonna think of me and check in? So try and just reach out, asking for help.
That's such good advice, Jo. And I know quite a few teachers as well who are just delighted to have that kind of collaboration with parents, particularly single parents. So if you are a single parent, it can be easy to think, I don't want to, bother my child's school teacher. They've got enough on their plate at the moment anyway. I don't want to make a fuss, or I don't want any special kind of favors or supports. But really encourage you to chat to your children's teacher directly and say, look, I'm parenting alone. This is my personal circumstance. I'm under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And so they're aware, because if you are exhausted, your children might find that they're reflecting that exhaustion in the way that their disposition in lessons, and teachers are able to then also be more generous to them because of the circumstances. But also their teachers will want to support you and sometimes can provide extra work or even additional classes. And I've heard of some schools where where there's even some teaching support for parents in particularly difficult circumstances as well. So try hard to, I know this is, again, we don't want anyone to feel embarrassed or humiliated in any way. This is not a statement of failure, absolutely not. This is just saying, actually, we all who are co-parenting, who are struggling significantly, if you're parenting alone, you are doing an incredible job under the most difficult circumstances we could ever imagine. So do recognize no one's going to patronize you. They're just going to agree with you and your struggle and empathize 100%. So be encouraged. And as Jo said so wisely, reach out and get some people in your corner. Absolutely fundamental. Jo, just as we move on, I want to talk a little bit about managing what we call managing children's emotions, because the circle of security, the safe haven bit of welcoming them in, I know that Cooper and the team behind Circle of Security talk about organising a child's emotion. Now, that sounds quite difficult to do. Many of us struggle just to interpret what our child's emotions are, let alone start organising their emotions. I'm just wondering if you could give us the sort of, a simple guide for what does, if our responsibility is to create a secure base for children to go on an adventure from, that sounds quite straightforward because that's a lot of confidence building. But organising a child's feelings when they're feeling a little distressed or a little vulnerable, what's that look like, and what steps can we take to make that work?
This one was the one for me that I just really wasn't doing. I was doing the very opposite. So as the children for me were coming back into me with emotion, I couldn't sort of cope or didn't know what to do with emotion. So in general, I would shut things down to sort of cheer them up or just to sort of distract and move on their way. And so there is a place for distraction, but if we never allow the children to bring, and young people, particularly teenagers more than more, to be able to bring whatever emotions they have to us, then they just don't learn to process them for themselves. And obviously that's what we're wanting to do with our children, is to equip them to be able to self-regulate into being a sort of healthy, functioning adult with their emotions. So all the emotions are there, and there's nothing wrong with emotion, even as big and as scary as they might be to us, but it's a way of just being with them. And obviously that will vary or look differently to their age. If they're very small and you may not quite know what's going on with them, even just physically mirroring back what their emotions are. So if they're sort of crying, just to sort of raise your voice and screw up your own face to mirror the energy that they're bringing you. And I have tried this, and they look at you like, oh, and they calm because they can see that their emotion is being understood in the sense of it's being mirrored. And really it's that developed through as they get older and older. So when they're a bit older and you're beginning to see, you've just said, I'm sorry, we have to put the toys away now, we've got to go to pick up, or whatever, and they kick off, you can say, yeah, I can. It's really frustrating, isn't it? So annoying, but we're going to do this, and then lay a plan for what's going to happen. And then obviously as they get older, you can ask more questions. What do you think's going on? What do you think's, we used to use the phrase, you seem very out of sorts. What do you know what's going on? And of course there's that sort of pubescence where they're just overwhelmed with emotions, and actually it's quite scary. So actually it's almost like going back to when they're toddlers and saying, oh, I can see that this is just kind of overwhelming, and you're not really sure what's going on. And even if you can't necessarily identify specifically what you feel is going on, just again to have that sense of being mirrored and therefore understood in and of itself helps the young person to sort of feel like, okay, it's okay, I can work this through. And so actually that's where it goes into the sort of good old super nanny, where there's all the sort of time out. Actually, what we want to be doing is what they now would say is to time in. So it's be with our children when they've got all these big emotions, because actually when you think about it, you've got a child or a young person who's full of emotion, and they say, go over there on your own and don't come out until you're calm or you've sorted yourself out. So you're actually asking them to go and deal with this huge tumult of emotion and without the skills. So, even if they're sort of kicking off and being quite sort of, chucking things all over the place, obviously you have to make the space safe. You've got other kids as well, but you stay within eyesight of the child and just say, I'm here, I'm ready, I can see, or really, whatever you feel like is going on, I'm here with you. So that over time they learn not to be scared of their own emotions and to be thrown by it, but to begin themselves, to be able to identify what's going on in themselves and to be able to self-regulate.
So that's brilliant. I mean, that was genius what you just said. I mean, I'm lapping that up. That's so helpful. This
was a game changer for me. As I say, for me, it was just always trying to, you're okay, well, let's cheer you up. And actually what the research shows is if you stay with your child, so, if they fall over and hurt themselves, and a lot of people say, don't make a fuss of them, otherwise they'll keep making a fuss. But actually, the research shows that if you're with your child, so if you say, that looks like you've hurt your knee, I can see you're crying. Actually, if you're with them in it, they actually bring themselves back up to regulation quicker than if you say, come on, you're fine, off you go, go play. If you do that, the child takes longer to come back up to a sense of feeling well within themselves. So, and as I say, I came across that when our guys were teenagers, and it had the most extraordinary change as I changed how I responded to them. Yeah,
that is really, really helpful advice, and really fantastically put, Jo. So clear. I mean, I think we, certainly grown up in a generation of parents who were quite quick to kind of push emotion down, and that sort of suppression, repression, and denial stuff we know isn't healthy. I love your idea of the sort of mirroring and the allowing and dialoguing through the child's emotion. I mean, it takes some confidence, parents, this stuff. So what we probably say both is do an emotional experiment. Don't choose the biggest kickoff to do this on, but choose something that's small enough to try and cut your teeth on. In terms of don't wait for the mega explosion to try and do this mirroring exercise. If one of the children are angry or upset, you just be like, exactly as Jo is saying there, you look angry, how are you feeling? Do you understand what's going on? Is there anything, tell me a bit more, you sure that's it? And really dig in a bit. And it's quite counterintuitive, I think. And it's also, the flip side is it's time consuming, or it seems time consuming. But as Jo's just said, the time it takes them to self-regulate actually is quicker if you dive in than if you dive out. Yeah. So such a helpful comment there, time in, not time out. I've always thought that. Why do we send children out of the room when they need us the most? Yeah. Like, what's going on with that? It's really, really unhealthy. There is a little tool that I use sometimes in coaching. I call it PAIR. It's the PAIR conflict resolution model. And so this again might slightly older children here, but the first one, P, is paraphrase the facts. As Jo just said, the child, you've fallen down. You've fallen over. You've hurt your knee. You're paraphrasing the facts of what's happened. Then encouraging the other person to talk. How are you feeling? That's the E. Paying attention. I think our children, particularly now, we're all in the same house. We're taking each other for granted, and we're not giving each other attention. So pay attention to their feelings and to their needs, and then reflect their feelings back to them. So when they've said, I'm feeling really angry, Daddy, then you say, I hear you're feeling really angry, Joseph. You're feeling really angry. And so that's the mirroring worked out in their own mind, that you've actually actively dialogued their feelings back. Now, we use PAIR in business, in adult coaching settings. It's great for conflict management between adults. It's also useful for children. So just think of that: PEAR, paraphrase, encourage, pay attention, and reflect. And that's a kind of a practical way of bringing some of this stuff into line. Really, really helpful, Jo. If we're going to just moving on, we've just got about 15 minutes left on this call, but if you're going to sort of encourage people in terms of long-term progression, I mean, this is obviously it's a once in a generation, we hope, experience this. We've just been told today that schools won't be returning till at least, I think, the 8th of March. Yeah. So I think we're now on the 27th or so of January. I mean, I felt my guts kind of just roll over when I heard that tonight. I know there are a lot of parents out there in a lot worse situation than I'm in. If we just turn our mind to parent care for a little while, any words of encouragement for parents generally with this kind of long haul view ahead of them? I know you've worked with parents in some really difficult circumstances. You haven't got remission from difficult circumstances. Anything you've learned there, or from some of those parents who you've supported, about how to kind of keep resilient in this really difficult season?
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I would say, that's one of the things I love about KidsMatter is in bringing parents who might be quite isolated together. And, we can actually do KidsMatter in person at the moment, but also we're doing them as groups online, in groups. But even online, just that sense of being in this together. And as I said before, I think just anything we can do to put ourselves in a team, because we're not at the best of times meant to be doing parenting alone. And it really is a teamwork activity. And so I would really encourage us to keep, as we're exhausted and tired, it takes effort and energy to step out and reach out to friends and make calls and things, but just to really encourage us to keep doing that. And to really be asking people, if you're of faith, to asking people to be praying for you and for your family. Because we need that. As I say, we're not to be doing this on our own. And as I say, just to give us some structure, but a change, so that makes sure the weekends are different to the week time. Evenings, try and do things that aren't, there's something that the kids will really enjoy that we can do together, maybe, because again, if they've all been separated off doing their own pieces of work, just to make the most of moments and to champion anything, make a cake for the slightest celebration, any reason, somebody managed to wear a green jumper today, let's get a candle and blow it out. Just anything to sort of bring some highlights in today, and some respite for us, some fun. Laughter is, we know, one of the best medicines for our well-being, and releasing, those good hormones in us. So what can we do that can be fun and relaxing? Let's take the pressure off ourselves whenever we can. And if it suddenly starts snowing, run outside and make the most of that. That's the time to sort of bin the schedule and get out there and make the most and make memories. I think I don't in any way want to belittle the real struggles of this season. It's hideous, but equally the children they won't remember being homeschooled by their mum or their dad and them yelling at them. They'll remember the fun things where they kind of made a camp or that kind of thing in the house. That will be what they remember. So what can we do? Again, it's not putting extra pressure on us, but just easy things, but that will make memories for our kids in this, as you say, very unique time. But let's try and think of the positive spin on that in terms of just some funny, quirky things that we did because it was lockdown.
Really, really helpful. Someone was talking to me about the idea of moving from having a macro vision, a sort of vision of like the school term and then the holidays and going away and all this stuff, to this micro vision where every day is a sort of condensed version of the year. It sounds a bit exhausting, but every day there's an opportunity for, where's your mini holiday? It's like a walk around the park. Is your mini celebration? It's not a birthday, but it's something to give thanks for. It's a special meal every day. One of the 3 meals, make something different. Nice. The other night I did I was, you know, I was, it was my turn to cook, and I went to the supermarket and I said, we're going to have a Mexican night. I didn't know anything about Mexican food, but I got all this Mexican food and I put this Mexican fiesta music on the smart speaker, and we had this sort of sombrero night where we made tacos and all this stuff and cheesy jalapenos and all this sort of things. Yeah. And it was actually hilarious. So it was really fun, and it was actually a cheap meal, but it was just a fun thing to do, a silly thing, but actually the kids, it was funny because the kids have sort of like, you know, I mean, I think I've made a burden for myself now because they want the next theme night meal, which I've now got to kind of create, which is a bit of a nightmare. But there's definitely like a way of sort of a micro view for every day, with one or two things that you swap in or out. I mean, I think this is where I've got a lot of respect for people like Joe Wicks, who've done a little workout exercise video. Not because, I mean, the workouts are great, but actually it's just the interruption of saying, oh, let's do our 15 minutes of Joe Wicks, you know, let's have a walk around the block, let's cook some food. You know, my son Joe, he baked a cake the other day and we made a big fuss of that. He actually did really well, but it was doing some things. I guess, again, the key thing for parents here is to say, look, it's not a competition. Like, it's just a stage by stage experience, but there's stuff you can do, and obviously grade it to their age and stage. I mean, some parents have said to me they've always been really disparaging about their kids' consoles, you know, the Wii and the Xbox, all that sort of stuff, like, oh, that's their useless waste of time. Now the whole family are on the kind of family competition on the Wii or on the Xbox. And actually, I think that's bringing families together where consoles and things have created conflict. Yeah. Suddenly parents are actually getting into their children's world, and the kids are loving it. They're like, wow, it's amazing. Like, Dad wants to play. Yeah. Yeah. So there's some opportunities there, aren't there? Joe, just by way of, as we sort of bring this evening to a close, I mean, you've got three sort of lovely adult children now. Looking back, are there any things that you feel like, firstly, we really got that right, as in, for us I mean, obviously everything was different for every family, but is there anything you think this was really valuable for us as a family that you think other people might benefit from? And anything that you think, looking back, I wish I'd done a bit more of this. So something maybe you don't feel you did enough of, just to get some personal insight into your family story. Yeah.
Gosh, what do we do right? It's so much easier, isn't it, to think of all the things I will do differently when we have, well, if we have grandchildren in time. I think what we did right is, I mean, Tim is way better with all the kind of fun things, and we did do silly thid that were fun, cheap and easy. You know, we at that stage of life when the kids were younger, you know, there wasn't a lot of money around. But we did do a lot of sort of camps in their bedroom was the play, you know, it was the playroom. It was a relatively small flat. And we just did, you know, we put a tent up in the, you know, made space, and just a little 2-man tent. And, you know, they'd sleep in that, or we'd have a little picnic inside it, things like that. Throwing water, but one of the windows of our flat was above the main door, or I shouldn't say this, of the main front door into the building. So, you know, water bombs out, that kind of thing, just fun things, obviously mainly trying to wait for Daddy, but other people got involved too, sadly. So I think just good at Tim particularly at just coming up with fun little rituals. And one thing we did, they couldn't pronounce it properly, so it was still known as award ceremony, because it was an award ceremony. And we would just basically, it would be things like when they needed new toothbrushes, they would prompt me and they'd say, right, let's have an award ceremony. And we would get them each to say something about each person, something of their value. So not an achievement, but of their value. And they, you know, at various stages, we did it all the way through, teenagers and everything. Obviously, at times, I hated it. It was the worst thing ever. But, you know, it just, we wanted to sort of engender a sense of value for one another, and not just achievement of you know, anything. And I guess probably some of the things that I would love to have done differently is not to stress so much about minor things. I think for me, caring too much about what I thought we should be doing rather than, again, just reading and understanding our kids better. I didn't understand about introvert and extrovert. I didn't know about that until they were much older. One of our children is an incredibly strong introvert, and our whole life was extroverted. We lived in a flat, but everybody would come into our flat. And, I didn't appreciate the impact that would have on them. So things like that, just reading my children better rather than feeling like they had to fit into my plan. But that was because I had this huge pressure of thinking we had to present in a particular way. And actually I came to see that there was so much that we did wrong. And, we left, I stopped him repairing it because I thought it was really helpful for other people. Because, people would come around to our house and, oh, your kids are amazing. And so, yeah, you see that hole in the wall. And it was where a chair had been thrown in anger and had made a dent in the wall. And I was like, and they'd be, really? One of your children? And it's like, yeah, it's real here. And actually just to be real with one another as parents is so much more helpful than working so hard trying to look like you're doing the perfect job, because nobody is. And that when we can do that together and be real together, it's so much more releasing and helpful. And then we can just bump along and, do things well, do things not so well together and be supported in that. And I have to say, I had amazing friends who I could be real with. So I really appreciate that.
Such helpful advice, and so humble of you to say you're an amazing mum and a great role model. But it's so lovely. I love that story about leaving the dent in the wall, because I think it's so easy, isn't it? And I think we all do that. We look at one another's children and we think they're all perfect, and we tend to sort of judge ourselves harshly and think we're not doing well enough. And it's like we described about reading your children, wanting to read your children better. I guess that's all of our ambition. I want to understand my kids better. But so much of what you've said tonight has sort of resonated with that story of actually how can I understand my kids better? Well, getting on their level, listening to them, not being afraid of the drama. So good and so helpful for us. I mean, this is, as you know, unprecedented times, but there are also unprecedented opportunities to do that. And we had, we had this sort of, as I say, this highs and lows. And I was saying, actually, like I do get incredibly frustrated sometimes, but I also I'm aware that as a family we are having real conversations, and like as you've just described, we're keeping it real. And so if you're watching this tonight and you're thinking, wow, you don't know how real my family is, well, still be encouraged, because actually
if you move the mirror, the dent is still there.
Amazing. There's stuff happening in our families, and actually we can give thanks there. I want to just conclude tonight with Reinhold Niebuhr's prayer, which is quite helpful. He says, God, give us the grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed, the courage to change the things that should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish the one from the other. And just leave that with you, that serenity prayer, because actually there are things that cannot be changed in our circumstances. We all know that this stuff is what it is. There are things that should be changed in our circumstances, and we've got to define those two. I think so much of what Jo said tonight around sort of expectations and premeditated ideas, the things that actually we think should change, but actually probably shouldn't change, should give way to the things of actually, how can I change my response? I'm certainly going to come away from tonight's call with a little bit more curiosity, and hopefully I'm going to dial into that mirroring, and I'm definitely going to try you're in. I'm going to be sent in, not sent out. I love that, Jo. That's so helpful. It's been a massive privilege to be speaking to you tonight. Honestly, your wisdom is incredible. And KidsMatter is an amazing organisation. How can people find out a bit more about KidsMatter, Jo? Is there a website?
Do go onto the website, and sign up for our newsletter. All sorts of ways to be more involved. We'd love that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. It's an amazing organisation. If you want to find out more, and if you're a parent who just would like some additional support or would like to participate in one of their amazing courses, then just check it out. It's really great, and I'm sure there are many people on this call who might have a friend that they'd like to involve in the program, or maybe even become a coach and get involved in the program themselves, like Jo. So have a look out for that. We are going to conclude this call now. Obviously, everyone's on YouTube tonight, apart from me and you, Jo. So if you're watching on YouTube, if you can hit subscribe at the end of the feed, that would help us. We're going to come back in 2 weeks' time. We're going to look at a little bit about the teenage brain. We're going to be spending time talking about the teenage brain specifically, and that phase that Jo talked about earlier, where everything is overwhelming and chaotic and dramatic. And how do we do that? In the meantime, God bless you. We're praying for peace over your homes and over your families. Love one another as Jesus loves you. And just be kind to yourself and give yourself a breather throughout the week ahead. Thanks so much, Jo. Thanks so much, everyone. God bless you. And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Brilliant.
Goodbye.